Okay, people, boys and girls, this is a double treat for me today. First of all, I get to talk once again to the wise and wonderful Nancy Slonim Aronie. Nancy, how are you?
Really, really, really good. And nobody ever says Sloanham right, and nobody ever says Arony right, so I'm bowing to you.
Ah, well, I try to be a little professional, just a little bit when I do these. So that's my one first, that's the first treat. But then the
Yeah.
cherry on top of the ice cream sundae that is a conversation with you is we get
Yes.
to talk about one of my favorite things, the personal essay, my medium of choice, in fact.
Is it?
Because, oh, yes, that's what I do. And in fact, this is uh, your latest book, Seven Secrets to the Perfect Personal Essay. I've thought about writing a book about how to write personal essays for a while, but I think I'm just going to tell people to read this instead. It's
Oh,
awfully
good.
good. It does it all, and in your friendly, experienced voice. So, congrats on the book.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you.
My pleasure. Second, you wrote one book, then waited a long time, and then bang, bang, two books just like that. How you feeling?
Oh, very, very good. Especially being old. You know, I wrote a memoir and it got 17 rejections. And they were
Ooh.
all fabulous. I have a big deal agent, and they said they almost all said the same thing. I loved Nancy Slonim Aronie's memoir. It made me laugh. It made me cry. It was so powerful and moving. But seven of them ended by saying, somehow I can't see it on my list.
Blah,
So
blah,
I
blah, blah.
remember, right. And I remember thinking, well, what's wrong with your list?
Yeah, maybe your list is stupid.
Right. But the big thing was I wanted to be 80 when the book came out. And so I was 78 then. So then these other two books plopped out as little babies.
Well, but you are for our listeners, viewers who didn't get check out my first interview with Nancy, which you should go back. It's all in the archives. Nancy is many things, but a teacher is one of them. You've been teaching writing for since the 90s. Am I remembering
Since
correctly?
before you were born, honey bunch.
No,
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 I don't even
no.
know. No,
Thank
it's a
you, but no.
long time. And you know what? I wouldn't even use the word teaching as much as facilitating
Yeah,
because my whole thing is about being in a safe place to sound like you,
yeah,
as
yeah.
opposed to trying to impress the reader with big words and intelligent stuff.
Yeah. We,
Like
you know,
undoing the damage of school.
school, my sister's a teacher and she's a good one. But when I find myself writing about writing, which I sort of do, and teaching my own version of what I teach, um, we talk about school a lot because, one of the things about school, and I'd like to hear your opinion on this. One of the challenges of it is we take these kids who are curious because they're human and they're curious by nature. And we say, okay, now pay attention to what I want you to pay attention to when I want you to pay attention to it. And my son's on the spectrum and he did not understand. This made no sense to him. He couldn't
No,
understand, but I don't want to. So why does that? I mean, it goes against everything that is great about us in a certain
they
way.
take away the imagination. They tell you to memorize stuff so you get an A on the test so you can go to Duke.
Yep.
And the goal is to go to a good school. It's not about critical thinking. It's not about curiosity. I had a pretty good education because of the old days. But in terms of writing and personal essays, having your own voice, I mean, do you remember indent five spaces and never use the word I?
Yes.
Interested in how you feel? Uh,
Yes.
they really took a lot of people's voices away. But I think a lot of teachers say they give two grades, one for the creative aspect and one for the,
Oh, good. All right. All right. Maybe, you know what? I won't knock school too much. These maybe people are starting to adjust. I remember sitting with my son's teacher and I said, let me give you some advice for teaching writing. Don't just tell them to write about anything they want. It doesn't matter. Just anything that interests them. And she looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, I'm
you didn't
serious.
tell her that everybody should write about my summer vacation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's tough. They're not writers. Okay. But so interesting. So speaking of school, so this is the personal essay. And of course, our first introduction, many of us humans, to the essays, of course, uh, school, I talked to Kelly McMasters, who's a wonderful essayist, memoirist, and I was like, I'm sick of the word essay. It has too much negative connotations. I want a different word, story, blah, 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 blah. But we start by saying, okay, write an essay about blah, blah, blah. But of course, this is kind of how you made your bones for a while, was writing personal essays and
No,
publishing them all
no.
over the place.
I have a column in the Martha's Vineyard paper, the Times. It's still how I make my bones. It's still how I make my income. It's still what I love the most. I have tried fiction, believe you me, can't do it.
It's a different animal, isn't it, Nancy?
It
I tried
really
it for
is.
15 years diligently, and as soon as I switched to the essay, I was like, God, this is home. It
It,
was startling.
yeah, that what a great phrase. This is home. Exactly. It just feels so because then you're just talking to your best friend
Yeah.
and telling them what happened.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. See, this is the thing about the essay, and I tell my students, I'm like, look, and to some degree, we're all essayists because we're always telling each other stories about what happened. It's just that
Hey,
most of the stories stink when we tell them. They're just complaints or bragging. They're not fully formed, but we're doing it on some level, right?
absolutely. I mean, what I say in class often is, you're sitting in your car on North Main and Mountain Road, and you get the red light, and you're sitting there thinking, "Oh my God, my eye makeup. I've been crying all night. I didn't clean anything off. I hate him. I hate him." And you've got James Taylor cranked, and you look to the right, and he's sitting in his Jeep Wrangler, and he's wearing the sheepskin jacket you bought him, and you are unbelievably passionate, and there isn't a detail you miss, and now you go to write it. Having sat in my automobile, what happened to your passion? What happened to your voice? What happened to your broken heart?
Yeah.
So the main thing is you have to keep that immediacy, that emotional connection, and you have to pretend that you're screaming at whoever you're talking to instead of whispering.
Interesting. Now that's something I hadn't thought of. So in your mind, and you don't just mean Trumpian all caps and exclamation marks,
No,
but you
but
want the emotional level. I always
yeah.
think like if there was a bruise, you got to put your thumb on it. In other words, like
Ooh, that's good,
pain,
but I just felt that. But that's exactly it. It's
right?
like, don't protect the reader.
No,
Say they won't be able to handle it. Oh, I really don't want them to know about this because it's so embarrassing. They'll find out I'm human.
right.
And the universality of all of us knowing what it's like to hurt. That's
Yes,
why are you going to avoid that? Why are you going to, one of the things I also tell is how this is a long story, but I think you'll like it anyway.
I'm sure.
Um, so when Dan, my son Dan, came home from open heart surgery, he's not with us anymore, but he's definitely my muse, and he lived a very full life. So no broken heart here. Came home from the hospital, and he always had a girlfriend, and always a gorgeous one. And I was filming him at the time because in retrospect, I was putting a camera between his rage and my terror. It was the
Right.
first thing I ever did. So I'm filming him, and she's lifting him onto the bed, and she goes, "Oh my God, the urine bag, it's stuck." And she was strong, and she was able to hold him, and I'm filming, and she flipped the urine bag onto the bed, and the whole thing was gorgeous. And he looked like a cadaver. He had just gotten home from Mass General.
Right.
A week later, I got a call from a gallery in Connecticut where I'm from. And the guy said, "I want you to come back and I want you to get on the stage and I want you to tell your funny stories." And I said, "I have no funny stories. My kid is sick. I'm crying all the time. I am not coming to Hartford." And he said, "Come on, Nance." He didn't hear me, obviously. "Now, bring some of your new friends. You moved to the vineyard. You abandoned us." And then I thought, wait a minute, I have 50 hours of Dan. I could bring Dan in the wheelchair. I could show some of the film. He'll get a standing ovation. He'll know that what he's doing is not for naught. And I
Right.
said, yes. And a gal had just taken my workshop who had graduated from film school. So I called her on the phone and I said, "Beverly, if I gave you a bunch of tapes, would you give me like 20 minutes? It doesn't have to have any continuity, no beginning, middle, and end. I just want to show it up on a big screen." She said yes. She gave it back to me. And guess what she did not put in?
The urine bag.
You got it, baby. So when I tell the story, I say to my students, the urine bag is the story. Don't protect the reader. Now, should it be the first line of the piece?
No.
Not. but
Probably not. Probably not.
probably not. But you never
Wait,
know.
but one thing I think it's important for our listeners and just everyone to know, and you talk about this in the book, but I just it as because you're a storyteller, is that the pain isn't enough. If the pain was the only thing in the story, it's really just I always feel like it's leaving me in the middle. There has to be a point to it.
Good.
Why are you telling me about the urine bag? Why are you telling me about crying? There's something on the other side of our pain. There always is, I think. And that's really the real point of the story. What's on the other side of it? Yeah.
Yeah. What happened? Where did you, how did you deal?
Yeah.
And how did it change you? And where
Yeah.
are you? And even if it changed you and you got wisdom for an eighth of a second,
Right.
that's when you write it. You can be an
Yeah.
asshole again 10 minutes later.
That's right.
Right now, you have a piece of wisdom, put it on the page.
And I think I talked to Cheryl Strayed after she wrote Wild, right? And it was a good conversation. And what she made a point in it, which I think is really useful for people who write memoirs. She said, it's not like when I finished the walk up the Pacific Crest Trail that the light had dawned, but she had kind of chosen a new path
Yeah.
that she was not going to have to learn. She wasn't going to go back to heroin, I guess, and probably wasn't screwing around so much. But you do reach a certain point where you go. Because I remember when I was raising my kid who was on the spectrum, and I thought, oh, people aren't broken. I kind of saw that because of him. No one is broken. Now, I still worried that I was broken some, and sometimes tried to fix him, but I always defaulted to that. Like once I had seen that, I always came back to it. And I do think there is, even if we don't, I wrote a book about fearless writing about how not to worry what people think of your stuff, but I still will sometimes find myself
I
worrying.
loved your book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you
Both
so much.
all your books.
But just because we learn it, we still have to practice it. Oh, and that's a word you like to use with your own stuff, isn't it? The practice. Yeah.
Practice, exactly. It is a practice, and you do get better at it.
Yeah, you do. Oh, for sure. Once you're practicing it, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. So I love talking about personal essay because I love it. I think it's a great form. I think we all do it on some level, like I said. But so one thing I was curious about, you tell a story in Seven Secrets to the Perfect Personal Essay, about you're on a beach and you hear three parents ask questions. This is back when you were a younger mom, and you hear kids ask questions of their parents, and the parents don't answer them. Right? It's three different types of questions, and you ask yourself, why don't we always answer our kids? So my question to you is this: so you described the piece you wrote about that you realized you don't answer them all the time because you get tired of it, and you show your warts. It's a great lesson in storytelling. But my question to you is this: when you wrote the piece, did you start from the question, why don't we answer it, or had you? No.
No, I started with the quotes of the kids asking the questions.
So you just started with that.
Yeah.
No, but when I say started, I'm sorry. When I say started, I mean as a mental, like, did you ask the question of yourself, and then go right?
Yes, I was lying there thinking, oh my God, instead of judging these people, I was them.
Right. You saw that you were them.
And I had compassion. I went from judging them to thinking they might be great parents an hour, but right now they're harried. Right now they're distracted. And I'm sure I was the same way. And here I am lying here going, how could this father say you're going to get your bathing suit all dirty? Why isn't he talking to his kid?
At the beach.
I was the same way. So it shifted from judgment to compassion and understanding.
So it shifted. Okay. So the reason because there's always different ways, things that draw me to write certain pieces. And sometimes it's what you just described there, which is I went through the arc myself on the beach. I go through the arc and say, ooh, I got to write that. And sometimes it's just, I remember an experience and think, I'm going to go write that and figure out why I want to write it. Let me go.
That happens too. Sometimes you find out the answer in the middle of the piece, or even you wait till the end and go, oh, I never even realized that I had gotten that insight.
Right. Which do you prefer?
Beautiful. I think that's the best thing about personal essay is that the insights can often come from the writing, not beforehand.
Yes. Yeah. And that's in fact, I for myself, if I'm going to stay interested, and I got to stay interested, Nancy, or I just, or I lose interest. It's the discovery. I'll picture like don't think you know what this is about, Bill. I know you think you know,
Yeah.
but go leave room. Leave
And
room
the
for
surprises are there and they're worth everything. They're worth the work.
yes, they are. The
Yep.
work. They're worth the work. And in your mind, what's the work?
Well, the sitting down and keeping your butt on the chair,
When you want to,
approaching the computer, saying, I'm not gonna, who cares about, how clean? I'm not gonna vacuum. I don't like vacuuming anyway, but if I vacuum, I don't have to write. So the work is, really the
is,
discipline.
isn't it funny though, Nancy? I was going to write a book about it. I didn't, but I had the insight, which is like, it's about procrastination in a way, which is like writers, when you're in the zone,
Yeah.
it's great. It's as good as life gets. But sometimes we would rather clean our gutters than do this thing we love to do. It's such a, like, it's so weird
Why do we forget?
every time.
And why do we also forget, the wisdom that you get? Oh, I'm never
Yeah.
going to do that again. I just had, I just wrote a piece. It's not quite right yet, but a long time ago, Joel and I we're jugglers, but we're not, we're just fun. We have a good
Right.
time. And somebody asked us to juggle in their wedding. And that whole summer, this is 25 years ago, that whole summer, Joel kept saying, babe, we should have like a routine. We should have and I went, we're fine. We'll juggle. We're good at it. We'll just get up. We'll juggle. And he would say periodically, 3 months before the wedding, come on, we need a beginning, a middle, and an end. Come on, I was lying on the beach. I must have been in menopause or something because I just did not want to move. So we did nothing. And it came time for the wedding. And we got up and it was on Opus 40 on a quarry with all these multi-levels of rocks. It was
Wow.
beautiful. The guests were all there. The minister had finished. They were married. And now Nancy and Joel Aronie will gift them with their entertainment. And we step out and I threw one ball and missed. And it plunk, plunk, plunk into the water. And not only did I screw up the juggling, but on their wedding video, I said, fuck. Now, luckily they're divorced, and so the wedding video is somewhere. And then so I didn't write about it then, and I didn't really feel shame about it then. I kind of laughed and thought, I should have. And the people, they were friends and they loved me and everything was fine.
Right.
Fast forward to maybe a couple of years later, we're asked to juggle at a Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve thing for an elementary school for little kids for a party. And again, I never rehearsed anything. There was no rehearsal. They just told us you're going to go on before this guy, and then this guy's coming on after you. And you just have to juggle for 3 minutes. So we picked out funny clown outfits and we got out there and we're juggling. And the guy that's supposed to come after us doesn't come.
Oh,
And he doesn't come. And he doesn't come. And we're juggling and we're not performers. We're not
right.
professional.
Right.
And he doesn't come and we're looking at each other. And then Joel was phenomenal. He said, let's dance. And we started dancing and being weird. Anyway, it was absolutely horrible. We leave, we get in the car, and I said, oh, and Joel's showing me that he juggled pins, but
Right.
that's so anyway, we get in the car and I said, hey, they were just kids. It didn't matter. They were just kids. That's what the piece I wrote about was nobody's a just anything.
No, no, it
And
matters.
I had so much shame that I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking, how could I have not honored? So they're 5 years old. So they're just kids. They're not going to know if we're good or not. And that lesson has kind of stayed with
Oh,
me.
really? That one stayed with. Well,
That one,
I do think, there's a woman who's got a book out, and I'm getting my wife for Christmas. That is, it's called the Just Let Them Theory, I think. Her name is I've got it's something Robbins, not Tony Robbins, but she blew up. She's got this podcast, blah blah blah. So it's about just let them. But the reason I mention is that she had an experience where she was freaking out over because she was a lawyer, driver, type A, and she had these kids who were going to the prom and they weren't doing it right. They were going to get wet and they hadn't made plans, and she was freaking because proms meant a lot to her. And her older daughter said, "Just let them get wet, just let them screw up." And it was a revelation to her, and so she's on this kick about it. But the reason I mention it is she was spending so much energy not letting people that the poignancy of letting someone resonated deeper with her than someone maybe who would have been more relaxed. They wouldn't have recognized the value of just letting people do their
Yeah,
thing. And so if you have had a little shame, or if you've just been a little, that's when the value of the opposite is most poignant, right?
exactly, exactly. Just Let Them is a great title.
Isn't it?
And
It's
it's a great lesson.
it really is. It
And I
really is.
think that's the best part about this personal essay stuff is because you get lessons every time. And again, whether you learn them and stick to the teaching, that's, that's the hard part. But
Well,
sharing, when you get the wisdom, sharing that sliver of insight, that's when you write.
I agree. And I wrote for, so you have a column and I have a column for Author Magazine. And for a while, Nancy, for a while, not anymore, but for many years, I did 5 a week, one a day, 400,
Whoa.
400 words. Yes. And happily, I was banging them out. But it was my first real like immersion in the personal essay. And what I realized is an essay would be good if there was a problem. I needed some little problem, right? And I started scouring my life for problems, and it made me look at my life differently because it's kind of a cliche, but there was value in every single one of those little moments where I was unhappy, right? And I couldn't bring myself to complain anymore the way I used to. I mean, I still would, but not the way I used to
That's
because,
so great.
right? It teaches you because you start saying, "Ooh, that'll be good." Have you ever been
Yeah,
really angry at someone and somewhere in the back of your mind
yeah,
thought,
yeah.
"Ah, but this
Grist.
material.
Well, I think Nora, wait, who's the
Nora
one that,
Ephron said that when
yeah,
I interviewed her. Actually, she
yeah,
said
yeah.
it's all
It's
material.
all grist because she had a heartbreak and she went to her mother and she was sobbing.
Yeah,
And instead of her mother holding her, she said, it's grist.
that's right. That's tough. Tough mom.
Held her and then later said, you can write that, honey.
Yeah. Well, but it's really true. It's at this point it's all material because don't you ever sit down and go, "Oh man, I got nothing."
Yes, yes,
What?
yes. And then you really just have to sit there and say, I got nothing. And
Yeah.
then something always comes,
Yeah.
always.
Yeah. It
Trust.
does.
You have to trust that you're not alone doing this, that you have a universe that's a partner with you. And if you are willing to sit your butt down and say, I really want to do this, something will come, the phone will ring, a car will crash outside your house. And I mean, it will happen, but
Yeah.
you have to initiate it. You can't, it's not going to come to you unless you're a partner, a
I
full partner.
love that. Agree 100%, Nancy. It was when I started seeing writing as a relationship that I got it.
That's
Because,
so great.
right, it's like I got
Oh,
my
what?
part.
That's a good title.
Ooh,
Writing a relationship.
hey, I like it.
That's yours,
But it's
unless I steal it.
you can I gift it to you if you want. But it's sort of like I have my part and I got to know my part, my
Yes.
job. But where I used to suffer, because I was always I was going to be at the desk no matter what, come hell or high water. But I was trying to do more than my job for years. I think I was trying to do the muses, gods, whatever word you're comfortable with, that it's job. But it's not your job. It's not your job. But you do have to show up and be open and receptive. But when I learned that, it got easier.
Yeah, I love the relationship,
Yeah.
right? Relationship, good for you.
Well, it's kind of like you mentioned Joel. It's a relationship. You've got to be. There's a way to be in relation to people that is useful and a way that is not, and it's not dissimilar to writing,
He
right?
is my muse. 57 years of marriage, by the way, and I proposed to him.
I know. Back in the day when girls weren't proposing to boys.
Right, that's right. But he is material. I mean, right now, I got to tell you one that maybe you can help me. He bought two basketballs on sale, and because the basketballs at the Chilmar Community Center are lousy, he says they have no air in them, they're horrible. So he bought two, and he was going to put one up there and just put, have a good time. And he came back and he left it there, and he told me that he put CCC, Chilmar Community Center, please leave. And I said, you should
Please
just put Chilmar
leave.
Community Center because now whoever's there thinks it's an official thing that they own, that the place put it there. I want them to know that it was a gift from a human. Why didn't you put Love Joel? He said, Nance, I don't need the credit. I said, but you could have just put, love from a friend. So then he went back up there and it was gone. And he comes home and he goes, yep, it was stolen. It was taken. And I said, well, see, they can steal from an institution. They would never steal if you had had the
Oh,
personal
I
note.
see. I think that's true. That's it. See, there's something in there. But
I
what's
know.
the angle you want to take? See, but
But
that's a
wait,
story.
there's more. He went up there and it was behind a bush.
Oh,
It
oh God.
reminded me of a long time ago. We sold Dan's van, and the woman gave us a check and then drove away. And Joel said, you took the check and you didn't wait for it to clear, and you gave her the van." And I said, "Well, Joel, nobody would cheat on a handicapped van. Come on." And he said, "I don't know, I would have waited." And I said, "No, no, 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 that just would never happen. You're not trusting people." The next day, we loaned our Volvo station wagon to friends who went to the beach with all the beach stickers. You can't get on the beach unless you have beach stickers. They came back and they said, the stickers, they said there are no stickers. And so we looked at the car and Joel said, "Somebody stole the stickers. Look, you can see the outline." And I said, "Oh my, maybe you're right about the people not trusting people. This is unbelievable." I called town hall. I had never gotten the stickers.
See this, I'm liking this. These are
Right.
good. These are good. You have to have written that one, right?
But no, no, I have to write the two together. Do they match? Do they go together?
Yeah, I
All
think
right.
so.
All right.
But see, that's when it's interesting because you'd have to decide there's so many different ways you could tell that,
Exactly.
so many different angles you could take, you know?
Exactly. I'm definitely, one of the things I have to do is talk before I write. I
Oh,
have, I have to hear myself. So if I
oh,
tell the story to someone, then I know how I
oh,
know more about it. I have
that's
to hear it.
interesting.
I have to hear in fact, I tell all my students to read out loud because you do hear from a different part of
Yeah,
your brain. So when I'm writing, I read out loud to myself.
yeah. It's probably a good idea.
You do that?
Every once, but not much, not much. I tend to, no, I mean, no,
So you
not
can look
really.
at the page and you can know what it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, I do. In fact, when I read Everyone I did the audiobook for Everyone Has What It Takes, and it was not surprised. So I read it, and it was, which I loved doing. But that was like performance art, for me. I got
Yeah. Oh, I'm so jealous. I have the last two books, they hired somebody else to do
no.
it.
They should have had you do it. I think, come on,
It in a New York minute. I would have loved to have, but
they
they
could have. It was but you're good at it. I mean,
I
you
do.
did. Come on, it's so much better hearing it from the author if you can,
Oh, I've been listening to books and absolutely, absolutely.
particularly the kind of books you're writing.
Yeah, they're from here. Heart.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Absolutely. All right. Well, you're gonna have to, yeah. But you know what I do, Nancy?
What?
When I haven't done it. I used to teach a lot of memoir class. I don't do it so much anymore. But when I did, what I would always say is, okay, everybody write, but I'm reading everybody's pieces. I will
Oh,
read it
oh.
because A, I'm good at it, and some of you aren't, and it's kind of boring. But even more important, I want you to hear someone else saying it, so that because in reality, it's not your voice they're going to hear; it's their own,
That's good. That's a
right?
brilliant idea.
Right?
And then they'll know what's wrong. They'll know
Then they
what
can
doesn't
hear it.
work.
Yeah. Because it's going to change in people's minds, and it changes in the readers. You don't know what
Yeah,
emphasis
well,
they're going
I do say you're not going to this person's bedroom, right, and reading your stuff.
to.
So therefore, you have to make the Bedoni bold. You have to have 6 exclamation points. They have to hear every nuance, every question. You cannot trust that they're going to know what you're trying to say unless you say it
That's right.
clearly.
I have a client. He's a very famous stand-up comedian, not in America, but elsewhere. But like stand-up's what he does. But he really wanted to get into personal essay, so I've been working with him, and working with him reminded me. He's a really wonderful writer. But working with him reminded me that the thing about writing, and I like to perform, I'm a bit of a performer, as are you, that when you write, you don't have this. You don't got the voice and the body. All you have is words. You got nothing else.
Yep,
Nothing. And you got to work with that extreme limitation.
yep. That's why it's visual on the page as well as the word choices.
Oh,
You
talk to
want
me.
a space. Well, I remember before I had a typewriter, I used a longhand and I sent a piece in and the editor was fabulous. And he called me and he said, "How long do you want that line you put there?" And I said a long line because I want them to get that thought before they go to the next sentence.
Oh,
So you have to determine for them, for the reader, how much time they should spend on that word and how big the word should be and how dark the font should be and how many exclamations you want, how many dots you want. You have to be specific if you want them to get what you're saying and how you're saying it.
it's so funny because the comedian, he really doesn't get punctuation. And I've been trying to, he just puts semicolons everywhere. And I was like, look, man, I said, this is not what I do, but this is starting to drive me crazy. I said, only because the punctuation is there to help make clear what you're saying. Like it serves, it's creative too. It's not just a bunch of rules you have to follow.
You're such a good teacher, Bill.
Ah,
Where's he from, this comic?
Australia.
Oh, that's what you said then. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's Australian. He's a funny guy, great guy, philosophical guy. And it's been an interesting because he's having tremendous success doing his thing. I mean, he goes all over the world and does it, but he's new to the writing game, so I've been helping him
That's a
out with
great
that.
teacher.
Well, thank you. As are you. As are you. I should say to my listeners, I'll be teaching a writing retreat here in Portland at the end of January. So sign up for it if you want Fearless Writing Retreat, 5 days with me in Portland. But if you're on the East Coast, especially if you should find yourself on Martha's Vineyard, Nancy, you're still doing the retreats, right?
Yep. I just put my calendar together.
Yeah.
One in June, one in July, one in August, one in September, one in October.
Whoa, you do one a month from the summer to, wow.
Used to do it every week.
Jeez, crow. How many people do you usually want?
The biggest one, it was 24 and it was too big.
Yeah. And just to, we don't have time for this, but go back because Nancy tells the great story about what drove you to, and it's a great story. We can't repeat it. It's too good now, but
A bad, mean-spirited group that
Yeah.
destroyed everyone. And
Yeah.
then I ended up teaching or leading a writing workshop, and the same thing happened. People were mean. They tore
Yeah.
each other apart. I saw shoulders go up. I saw faces get constricted. I saw the writing get generic. And then I made one rule, and that is, for my second one, when you finish reading, we'll tell you what we loved. And
Yeah.
that's the workshop.
Yeah.
Because it's not about publishing, my workshop. It's about process.
Yeah, and because I just think I always think you will figure out what I always think the writers should, on some level, they have to develop the technique to say to themselves, and this is something that I've been working on, actually, Nancy, on a deeper level, like, does that actually satisfy me? And sometimes the answer is no, like, that's not, and that's okay. Like, I can answer that question. I'm not so interested in what satisfies other people, honestly, like,
You
right?
can't worry about that. You
No,
really can't. You have to
but I
be
do
proud.
want to please myself. And sometimes what I write doesn't, and I'm like, nah, that's different than saying, I'm worried other people won't like this.
No, that's just a waste of energy right there.
Yeah. Yep.
I
Total.
think now one of the big things that I knew intuitively, but now I know factually, is that your sorrow and your fears and all that stuff is marinating in your body. It's in your liver and your kidneys and your heart. And even just getting the stuff out of your body onto the page is healing.
100%.
Would never call the writing workshop Writing to Heal because nobody would come. But that is what happens if you get this stuff out. And then I always make a joke afterwards. Don't worry about getting all the stuff out of your pancreas and all the fear and all the terror and all the heartache. More shit's coming.
Yeah, don't worry. It won't end.
It won't be easy.
It's so funny. I remember seeing a guy, I was going to the store and I saw this guy in the parking lot and he was this older gentleman and he was like, his shoulders up and he was bent over and he was all tight. And I thought, that is the story of his life in his body.
Yes.
That's not some medical condition. That is his view of himself and like whatever he's holding, just living in him right there.
So scared of his mother yelling.
Could be, that's right. It could be 80 years later and she could be long dead, but he's still waiting for that, to come.
Yep.
Get clear with it, people. Write an essay, get clear, move on.
Get healthy.
Look at Nancy. Look at her. She's not 35. It's okay. We all got it. We want to learn and get older, but look at her. She's got all this energy because she's cleared some of this shit out.
That's it. I'm a
I,
conduit.
that's right. I like it. Nancy, I could talk to you forever, but I don't have quite forever anyway. I got one more. Wait. So once again, I'm just going to, because people, look, you know how much I love essays. I love this book. I mean it, but I love Nancy, but I also love this book. Crafting the story. Only you can tell. That's the subtitle. And it is true. Only you can tell it. She's right about that. Got one more question for you. I've asked you this before, but maybe things change. I don't know. When you think about all the writing you've done, what has it taught you about just being a person, life?
Wow. Well, let me start with what listening to everybody else's stories has taught me is that
Mm,
everybody has a wound.
yep.
Everybody. There's no one that has gotten by. And I think telling my story, I have no boundaries. So I never had a problem with telling.
You and me both.
I think it's why we're having such a good time together. I did write a story about growing up poor, and a friend of mine now, who's very wealthy, said, "Aren't you ashamed?" I know. And I said, "I didn't make myself poor. I grew up poor."
Right.
No, there's no shame in it. I said, "In fact, it's just rich. The story
Oh,
is."
best. It's the
So what
best.
I've learned is that keeping the stuff a secret instead of sharing it, I just know that intimacy is what friendship and what love is all about, is this is who I am. This is what happened to me. Hi, you too. We are brother and sister.